No, you're not crazy. The top 1% of creators do know something and they are not telling you. No, it's not, oh, just post more consistently. Oh, just use eye-catching thumbnails. It is a practice that they do in every single video right under the noses of every single viewer. They are playing a completely different game than us. They are not worried about the YouTube algorithm because they have discovered an algorithm that hasn't changed in thousands of years and that is easily predictable and exploitable. This is the human algorithm. And if you're an ambitious creator that views this as more than just a hobby or just for funsies, then you need to master this as well if you truly want to grow your personal brand and build that cult-like following that actually gets you the growth and freedom you desire. I know this because not too long ago, I was completely oblivious. I spent years of my life chasing the dream of 10,000 subscribers. To really no avail, I felt invisible. I felt stuck. I began wondering if I was ever going to make it, if all this effort was even worth it. Until one day, for a completely different reason, I was reading a book on human psychology and things began to click. I began learning how the human brain actually works and drawing connections to what the top creators were doing, and thus I began to figure out how to do this myself. And everything changed. I didn't just pass 10,000 subscribers, I blew past 100,000. Now I have over 230,000 on my main channel. And beyond that, because to an extent the subscribers are a vanity metric, I began having the impact on my audience I always desired. My videos began flooded with comments saying, "This is the best video on the subject I've ever seen. This video actually changed my life." And in the background, I was able to build a 6-figure business off. All because I learned and leveraged these 7 dark psychology tactics. So if you're tired of being unseen by the algorithm, of not attracting the audience you desire, listen up, because by the end of this video, you will know exactly what to do to begin blowing up your following, your impact, and if you don't stop, get 100,000 followers on the platform of your choice. But I have to warn you, these tactics are powerful. These tactics are persuasive, and I do not condone using this to mislead people, to misinform people, to scam people, or anything like that. But the truth of the matter is, if you truly want to be a creator that can teach people, that can motivate, that can inspire, that can have an impact and build a following, you have to know these things. Persuasion psychology is truly a neutral tool. So I urge you to commit to watching this video and having an open mind. Let's get started. Your ideal viewer has problems they desperately need your help in order to solve, and with those problems come, typically, insecurities. So to get them to emotionally invest in your content so they'll actually watch it all the way to the end and trust you, you need to poke and prod at these insecurities. Now, I do not condone shaming. It works for some creators, but for the majority of creators, it backfires because unless you have insane amounts of authority and you say it perfectly right, it's going to come off as very arrogant and lecturing. And you kind of just come off as a dick. So an indirect way that is actually better because it gets them to identify with you further is through empathy mirroring. And that is when you describe their insecurities as your own. For example, on my other channel, I've often made videos on the topic of how to be more disciplined, but I don't open the video by telling them you should be ashamed of yourself, you're pathetic, you are weak, you are this, you are that. No, I open with talking about my past struggles with discipline and how that made me feel inside. I would talk about the immeasurable amounts of shame I felt, the feeling of falling behind, the feeling that I may not ever even make it if I can't get my shit together. Or just a couple seconds ago when I was telling you how I felt invisible, how I was wondering if I'll ever actually make it as a creator. And this works so well because it hits on 3 different parts of human psychology. One is hyper-relatability. By sharing your personal insecurities openly, the viewers think, wow, he understands exactly how I feel, which in an instant deepens their trust they have in you and makes them way more likely to watch the video to the end. 2, it establishes credibility. You see, viewers are always subconsciously hunting for reasons to not trust you or to click off the video. But this positions you not just as an authority that's achieved some kind of outcome the viewer desires, but as someone who has gone through exactly what they've gone through. You've walked the same path, you've overcome the same pain, you've battled the same demons that they are battling. And 3, it triggers emotional reciprocity. Because when you're vulnerable, when you share your insecurities, the viewers feel this subconscious need to reciprocate through deeper loyalty, through comments, through engagement, through likes, and of course, subscribing. But this is a tightrope that you have to walk carefully because you need to avoid the pitfalls of oversharing. Because unless you show a clear overcoming of these very feelings, they will not draw the connection in their minds, and thus you will still be viewed as insecure, as weak, and it will result in a loss of authority. But that's only half of the equation, because that merely focuses on the internals, the vulnerability of the viewer. So now we need to focus on the external, and that is through stabbing and twisting. So they did a study where they took a cute little free mouse and they tied his tail to a spring that measured the amount of force the mouse pulled on it. And then they took a piece of cheese. Fun fact, mice don't actually care about cheese any more than any other type of food. It's just like a weird thing we associate with them. And they placed it in front of the mouse, and unsurprisingly, the mouse started pulling decently hard towards the cheese. But what happened next surprised them, because they then wafted the smell of a cat behind the mouse, and they found that the mouse pulled way harder away from the pain, away from the death, than it did towards the cheese, the pleasure, the survival. Humans are the exact same way. We will work infinitely harder to escape a pain than to chase a pleasure. It's why motivational speeches work pretty well to say, get a guy into the gym, but a breakup almost works every single time. So let's say I was making a video on how to deepen your focus. I could say, so you can be more productive, so you can get more work done, and that would be meh. But if I start painting a picture of the sense of failure they'll feel when they miss their next deadline, or describe a timeline of what would happen if they don't deepen their focus, like falling behind in work, or getting laid off, or missing a promotion, or never starting that business they always wanted to, or tell them that there are people out there getting done in 2 hours what takes them 2 days to accomplish, all of that triggers pain within the viewer and gets them much more likely to want to be more focused. Because the truth is, people's brains, and I say their brains because it's not them consciously deciding to be this way, desire comfort above all else. And their brains and their egos give them this illusion that the current situation they're in is still more comfortable than having to take action in order to change. And we know that on a long enough time horizon, that's not the case. They'll just keep digging themselves into a pit, whether you're making videos about getting better at a sport, whether you're making videos about getting better at knitting, getting better at business, getting better at this or that. Anything in terms of education, motivation, inspiration falls along this line. Therefore, generating pain forces the viewer to see their current situation for what it actually is, therefore breaking the illusion that the ego is feeding them. But you've probably realized by now, in order to do any of these tactics properly, you need a crystal clear image of your audience avatar. Because if not, you can try these tactics all day, but something's always gonna feel off, not just to you, but to your viewers. And that is why I've created my completely free audience avatar generator. You can get it in the description after this video, fill it out, and you'll instantly have 10 times the amount of clarity on your avatar and who you're speaking to, and that will help every part of your creation process, from the title to the script to the way you talk to the camera. But if you want to ensure that viewers don't just click on one of your videos, watch it some way through, then click off to never see you again, you need to use this third tactic. The truth is, even if you want to be a more value-based creator, is that humans don't just follow random advice, they follow an identity. So if you want to build a 6-figure following, you can't just tell them what to do, you have to tell them who to become. Because human beings have a deep desire for 3 things: belonging, status, and direction. And it is why we adopt an identity that makes us feel like we're part of something bigger, that gives us a status boost around people that aren't part of this identity. Therefore, if you want people to stick around, you need to give them a sense of belonging to something bigger, of elevated importance and purpose, and a clear standard of behavior. This is why you'll see people say, I'm a vegan, I'm a CrossFitter, I'm a minimalist, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a creator. And this plays on the consistency bias, because once a viewer claims this identity, they will begin to subconsciously behave in a way that continues to align with it. So ask yourself right now, what powerful aspirational identity can you create for both yourself and your viewers? Then give it a name, set clear behavioral standards, and create an us versus them narrative around it. For example, I would say, we're not like the passive consumers that mindlessly scroll all day. We are creators. We are builders. All right, time for a harsh truth. Pretty privilege is real. You have a matter of seconds where the viewer decides if you are credible enough, if you are authoritative enough, if you are the right person for them, before they decide to continue watching or click off and avoid you for the rest of their lives. But the truth is, we can bypass this pretty quickly by appealing to the halo effect. And it's not about being a movie star or a beautiful model. It's just about having enough positive traits communicated as quickly as possible to get the viewer to assume that because you have those positive traits, you have the other positive traits needed for them to trust you and keep watching. For example, you're walking down the street and you see a guy in a military uniform, the shirt perfectly tucked in, the hair perfectly cut, his shoulders pulled back, his eyes looking forward. You would think, wow, that guy is probably pretty disciplined. And the truth is, he probably is. But if he was walking around in basketball shorts and a hoodie and slouched over, you would have never assumed that. So in order to do this, you need to have 3 different elements down. The third one people actually don't talk about much, but I will. But the first is appearance, the appearance of you when you're on your camera in your content. Now, this doesn't mean put on a suit. This doesn't mean put on a hoodie. This doesn't mean put on a tank top with your muscles showing. It's all dependent on your specific avatar. But regardless of what clothes you put on, be well groomed, because it communicates that you have a level of self-respect. Because if you don't, and you don't communicate it, they have no reason to respect you to begin with. Second is your environment, the background, the set, the studio that you're filming in. I had a student recently join my Audience Alchemy Mastermind, and I was going through some of her videos, and I clicked on one, and I instantly couldn't help but realize, oh man, if she would have just taken all that clutter on her desk in the background, all those makeup brushes and stuff, and just put it under the bed, take it out of the camera, it would have instantly improved her credibility, because she was making videos about how to manage your time, how to be more productive, how to get your life together, basically. And, you know, having things slightly messy in the background does not communicate that you have your stuff together. Another example you see in a lot of educational content is they have books behind them. I would have all my books behind me, but my apartment flooded recently. The fire sprinkler went off and I had to move to a new unit, so I'm currently waiting to get new books because all of those are ruined. But this does not mean you need a bunch of props or random things behind you. You need to go spend a bunch of money. Honestly, for a lot of you, it may just be best to subtract something from the background. For example, if I had some random painting that looked like it belongs at my grandma's house on the wall, and a bunch of weird pink flowers that seem very out of place for someone like me, I could just remove them. And thirdly, it is actually the framing of the camera, namely the camera angle. I see this far too often. Someone's trying to make a video, so they have their monitor in front of them and they just place their camera behind it on a tripod or clipped to the desk, and the camera's sitting above their computer monitor and they're looking up at it, meaning the camera, the audience, is looking down on them. Don't ever do that. I usually have a monitor right here. This is where I work, but I moved it away and I put the camera at the optimal level. Currently, my camera is about eye level, slightly below eye level, and this subconsciously communicates that, hey, we are seeing eye to eye. We are somewhat on the same level. Whereas if I took my camera and lowered it, it's like I'm talking down to you. I'm taking this high position of authority over you, and this could be way too much, as you can see. And then if the camera is high, it's like I'm looking up to you, like I'm in this compromised position that I'm putting myself below you. So for you, a good rule of thumb would be just have it maybe 1 or 2 inches below eye level. But you have to understand that authority and relatability is kind of on this spectrum, and you have to balance both. For example, there was one time where I was making self-improvement content for, we'll say, the audience slightly younger than me, probably still in their teenage years. And for one of my videos, I wore a suit instead of my usual typical black shirt. And I saw more than one comment saying, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you wearing this suit? It felt so out of place, and honestly, I was fully aware of it. Something did feel off, I just didn't understand at the time why. So go look at your last 3 pieces of content and ask yourself, does my appearance, does my environment, and does my camera angle and camera quality instantly communicate the credibility and role I am trying to take with my audience? If not, you have some work to do. But you can do all of those tactics and the viewer will still forget everything you said moments after they click off if you don't do this. Because most information flows through our conscious mind, then gets discarded right after. And if you want your content to be ingrained in the viewer's subconscious mind, you need to paint vivid imagery for their minds to latch onto, which is why step 5 is mental movies. So let's say I was making a video about how to lose weight with this dieting method. I could just say, you'll lose weight. That's pretty bad. Or I could say, you'll put on a shirt and it'll be loose around your midsection. That's a little bit better. Or I could say this. Imagine sliding into a black t-shirt that's tied around your arms, but loose and flowy around your midsection. Your wife walks into the room and you notice her eyes widen as she says, wow, babe, you look good. Which one of those 3 do you think will have a lasting impact on the viewer? Obviously the third. But not only does this help trigger emotion and embed yourself into the viewer's subconscious, but it actually makes you a better teacher because the human brain processes imagery much faster than just plain spoken word. It's why a lot of my videos, I am literally drawing on a piece of paper when I'm trying to teach you. And a bonus tip for this is incorporate multiple senses. Talk about a smell, talk about a sight, talk about an emotion, talk about a sound. That's gonna deepen the imprinting on the viewer's subconscious. But before we get to the last one, which is crucial if you do long form content, I need to reveal something that I've been doing throughout this entire video. It's tactic number 6, and I'm just gonna tell you straight up, it's called butt maxing. Not that kind of butt, the word butt. One of the biggest mistakes I see in both written and spoken forms of content is that people overuse the word and. I was doing this and then I did this and you're gonna get this and we're gonna have this and I'm bored to death. Because when a viewer hears the word and over and over and over, it just feels like it's being handed all this random kind of useless pieces of information. But when you introduce the word but, it communicates that, oh, there's a new conflict we need to solve. For example, I can say, you can lose weight and feel healthy, and I have 7 tips to help you do that. Or I could say, you could lose weight and be healthy, but you're probably making these 7 mistakes that the majority of people make when trying to get healthy. But, funny enough, I did actually save the best one for last, and this is one that dramatically made my content so much more engaging and improved my retention, not only mine, but I see it across the majority of creators, because the majority of creators, almost all of their pieces of content is some type of a list. It is a 3-part framework, a 5-step process, a 7 psychological tactics. But the majority of creators are doing this extremely wrong, and it's actually taking something that could be very good and harming their retention dramatically. And you'll see this in charts, a dramatic drop. You'll see dips and spikes. And that is because I want you to imagine that I have a box. Maybe it's a nice wooden box. Maybe it's packed like a Christmas present. Maybe it's a box made out of leather, whatever, some very intriguing box. And I come up to you and I have this box, but instead of opening it and just showing you what's inside, I start talking about what's inside the box without actually telling you the specific thing inside. As I'm talking, you're gonna get more and more and more intrigued, and then when I finally open the box, it's this big reveal and a big dopamine release for you. Instead of what most creators do is, here's what's inside the box, okay, now let me yap about it for 5 minutes. For example, if I was making a video, how to unfrick your life, and one of the steps is you need to clean your room or clean your house because it's good for you, it's good for the mind, yada, yada, yada. If I were to say something like, step 2, clean your room, the majority of viewers' brains are going to turn off, or they're going to skip ahead, or they may even click off the video because of the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is a cognitive bias that causes people to overestimate their knowledge and their abilities. They may think, oh, I already know what he's gonna say, oh, I know I should clean my room, even though they could be sitting in a fucking pigsty. But what if instead I started reading a study that science shows that the external environment around a person directly influences the internal conscious mind, and if there's more clutter externally, there's more clutter internally, yada, 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 then they're gonna be like, oh, okay, interesting, and then I revealed that the step is they need to clean their environment. Not only am I building up anticipation for the reveal, which anticipation is dopamine, but 2, I'm giving their subconscious mind a puzzle to help figure out as I'm giving away more context without giving away the whole reveal yet. And this actually makes the viewer feel more smart, which makes them learn better because I'm not explaining things like some boring professor. But you have to be sure that you give just enough context before the reveal, but not too much to make them frustrated and want to skip anyways. So you've probably realized this psychology stuff goes deep, and even this is just the tip of the iceberg if you truly want to build an insanely hyper profitable personal brand. And if you want to learn that from me, you can check out Audience Alchemy. It's my full-fledged creator career mastermind in the description below. But while that's going to help you make compelling, addictive, impactful videos that attract an audience, how do you actually turn that into a business? Because if you're like most people, you probably don't like the idea of being a slave to the algorithm, being a slave to view counts, and having to compromise the content you actually want to make to try and get a bunch of views to make $1, $2, $3 per 1,000 views. Well, if you click the video on the screen, I will reveal the best one-person business model for content creators in 2025. It's the exact thing that I do right now, that I've done for the past couple of years, that absolutely changed my life and got me the true creator freedom I've always desired. Click it. It's on the screen right now. Click it, click, 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 click.